Hello and welcome inside another edition of IndyStar Preps Weekly. I'm Brian Haenchen, joined by Akeem, Glaspie, and Neddenriep. We're back after the Goblins ate our show last week. Some people said it was the best show ever. Others said it was the worst. So it was a very polarizing show. Akeem had some takes. Kyle said some words, and it was exciting.
It
Akeem,
was a
how do
good
you think
show,
about
I
it?
thought. Well, I guess we'll never know for sure, though.
Yeah, Akeem, what did you think of last week's show?
Yeah, I would definitely say it was my best show ever. So yeah, I'm really disappointed that it'll never see the light of day. But it is what it is. It happens sometimes, and yeah. So we'll go over our picks. That's what people care about the most, right? Anyways, so
Yep, that was the most exciting part of the show. We know the outcome now. It was a disappointing week again for Mr. Glaspie, but we'll talk about that later. Let's start with our games last week. Kyle, let's start with yours. You had new pal Roncalli, the game that everybody was talking about. I guess first and foremost, did it live up to the hype?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it did for Roncalli, but probably not. For New Pal, and honestly, it didn't probably go the way I thought it was going to, especially the way it started. It was 7-7 early in the second quarter, and then New Pal didn't score again, and Roncalli didn't. They just. I thought they just played really well defensively, obviously to hold that New Pal team to 7 points, but. As the game went along, and over the years, it's kind of been, New Pal's MO to kind of wear teams down and dominate the second halves of games. And I kept waiting for that to happen or, to see maybe some of that take over. And it went the other way, really. And, I thought that, Luke Schwartz and two huge plays on 4th and 1. Luke Schwartz made both plays, and those were both in the fourth quarter, both with New Pal trying to drive. One of them I think was at the 38-yard line of Roncalli, and that was when they were still down by a touchdown. So that was just a huge play. They tried running up the middle on both plays out of the spread shotgun, and Kyler Kropp was playing running back for New Pal with Grayson out. Grayson Thomas out with that injury, and he just had nowhere to go. Luke Schwartz kind of beat his guy and on the inside, and he was there to tackle him. Made really good tackles both times. So that was sort of those two plays. I wrote about those in the game story, but those were the two that felt like the biggest plays of the game. I would say Kyle Ralph kind of felt that way too. Now there's no guarantee they would go down and score anyway necessarily, but those plays kind of took them out of it, and then Roncalli could kind of lean on their running game and that offensive line and Luke Hansen and I thought Eric Moyer's his stats weren't great, but they did hit some passes. I think they completed 5 passes, which were important to their win. Just to kind of keep the ball moving and keep New Pal's defense a little bit off balance. 5 passes doesn't sound like a lot, but considering their offensive style, it was. And they for the most part all night did a nice job on New Pal, both running and passing. And New Pal seemed really, for whatever reason, sort of one-dimensional in the passing game. Isaiah Thacker was really the only receiver that was targeted a lot. And it may have been something just that happened that way. But he had he had a touchdown catch early, and he's obviously a dangerous receiver. But New Pal just seemed a little bit one dimensional. It seemed like, and obviously the injuries to. Or the injury to Grayson Thomas hurt, and I think that kind of showed up in this game as well. But I don't know. I mean, it just felt like definitely Kyle Ralph was disappointed, you could say, for sure, that their offense didn't do more to help their defense out, and their offensive line. I would say Roncalli won that battle. We kind of billed it as the offensive line battle, and Roncalli obviously got the better side of that. So it was a good game. It was 20-7. It ended up. It was very competitive throughout, and I think on that night, certainly the better team won this game. But now, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but there's no. I think some people were saying, this is the state championship game, and maybe it was, but East Central is going to have something to say about that, and I would certainly think that they would, give Roncalli a very good game on Friday. So, I don't think it's a done deal. This was a state championship game. Now, this game, this game may be, because I think both these teams probably are the better of the two, or the best. The two out of the 4 left, they're the best teams left. So I would say that, but yeah, we'll see. New Pal certainly had a great season, and Roncalli got the better of him Friday.
Akeem, in your game, you had Warren Central center Grove. Micah Coyle went off in the fourth quarter to turn the game. For you, what did you see out there from the Trojans as they continue their title defense?
Yeah, that was pretty much kind of the what sums up the second half, maybe. But I mean, it was closer than the final score, but also not quite as close. I mean, Warren Central got within 28-25 in the fourth quarter, and then Michael Coyle kind of took over at that point. With touchdown runs of 63 and 72 in the fourth quarter, and yeah, I mean, he was great pretty much the entire game. I mean, his first touchdown was 45 yards. So I mean, from in the middle portion of the game, he kind of got shut down a little bit, just kind of, but they continued just chipping away, and then he was able to spring those runs. But I mean, Warren Central put up a really good fight. Adonis Adams Figueroa is a really talented quarterback. He can create with his feet and kind of with his arm. He had a nice kind of scramble and a touchdown pass to Joe Walker right at the end of the first half. And it was interesting. Warren Central rotated quarterbacks at times. Like sometimes, like Keith Jackson would play the first two downs, and then Adams Figueroa would come in on third down. I mean, I guess that's great in theory, but it makes you a little predictable as well. So, in talking to defensive back Matthew Neff after the game, he said they prepared for both quarterbacks. So I mean, it gives them a different elements with both quarterbacks, but it was something that Senegal was prepared for, and that kind of showed up on defense. So I mean, it was a really good game, but I feel like Senegal kind of controlled it. I mean, again, there were times where Warren Central was threatening, but in the end, Senegal was just too much, and Micah Coyle really put the game away again with those two runs, and he had 301 yards total on 31 carries, I believe. So just a really dominant performance by him.
Kind of feels like a theme each week where just like Center Grove continues to find ways to win, and it feels like it's sort of that championship pedigree, that history and experience of playing in these games so many years in a row now just keeps coming through in the biggest moments. And last week was maybe the latest in that long line of examples.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess the main difference from this Center Grove team, obviously, I would say it's a passing attack. I mean, the weapons are still the same, but I mean, they were just a little out of sync. Tyler Cherry and Noah Coy just a little bit out of sync. Some passes off receivers' hands, some slight overthrows, underthrows that if they connect, maybe they pull away from this game earlier, and it's not quite as close. And Michael Coyle doesn't need to shoulder as much of the load, but I would say that's the biggest difference. And maybe obviously the defense too. I mean, you don't replace a generational talent like Caden Curry and not miss a beat. But Center Grove is definitely still a very talented team, and I imagine they plan on competing in their class. So yeah, definitely still a talented team. And Warren Central I believe they're more talented than their record shows as well. If they have Adams Figueroa for the entire season, who knows what their season's like and what kind of chemistry they can build and that type of things. But no, it was a great performance by both teams.
For my game, I was over at Westfield HSE, and a really dominating performance by HSE when it came down to it. Their defense shut out Westfield, the first time Westfield had been shut out since last year's opener in 2021. I think the best defense, probably the best place to start. They suffocated the running attack. There was really only one time when the Shamrocks are threatening to score, and that was late in the first quarter when they got up to the 21. And then a penalty pushed them back, and then HSE's defense forced an interception to snuff out that scoring chance. And I think they only got across the 50 one other time the rest of the game, and that was in the second half. So it gives you an idea of just how dominating HSE's defense was, and it's been kind of a progression for them, having seen them earlier in the season, that HSE defense, to now, and just finding ways to continue to improve and grow. Just causing chaos with their ability to stuff the run and then pressuring the pass, and then also their pass coverage was excellent. When Westfield was forced to throw, it was a lot of short dump-off type pass, a lot of screens, trying to find things that way, and they get a few yards, but not a ton. And then offensively, HSE, it wasn't really glitzy or glamorous or anything like that. It was a lot of just a couple short runs on first and second down to set up third and manageable, and then they convert and keep the drive alive. And you could just see the cumulative effect where, credit to Westfield for not giving up touchdowns and forcing those drives to end with field goal attempts and punts, but you could just see the cumulative effect as the game went on of just those defenders getting tired and starting to wear down, and it turned out to be a big run at the start of the second half for HSE. They kind of blew it open and made it a 2-score game, and suddenly it's like, Westfield's in some trouble here, and sure enough, they never really threatened from there. So just credit to HSE. They looked really stinking good. I'll be interested to see what they do next week on the road in Carroll, but watching them, I have a hard time seeing another team knocking them off between now and Thanksgiving weekend. They just looked really, really sharp. And then one stat worth passing along: Jalen Alexander had 170 rushing yards in the second half alone. And that
Wow.
kid's a workhorse. He just kept calling his number and he kept delivering, kept moving his legs and stuff. So again, really impressive performance by HSC, and Jake Gilbert put it best when he said that's an elite defense they have over there. So fun team to watch. Another game of note from last week, Kyle and Akeem, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, was Cathedral beating Brownsburg 14-7, a low-scoring game. Obviously, we posted up at Brownsburg last week. What were your gentlemen's takeaways from that one?
Well, yeah, I was surprised. Not necessarily that Cathedral won, but that, it was a 14-7 game. I think that probably surprised a lot of people to see that score, even as the game went along, that as low scoring as it was. Come to find out in reading Paul Shepard's story, they had definitely some missed opportunities, I would say. Brownsburg did, and just not able to finish drives, and credit Cathedral's defense, which, kind of the strength of their team this year all year has been, hey, we're going to throw it, score a lot of points, and try to, win a shootout. I don't know if that's their plan, but that's kind of what they've done. Now this game was way different than that. So, and Brownsburg still did run pretty well overall for the bulk of that game, but they just weren't able to sustain drives. And I think partly too, and from what I heard was Whitaker got dinged up a little bit, was limping a little bit on that ankle. So obviously, there's no question he was not 100%, for that game after getting hurt against HSE. So, not to, certainly he was able to play, so that's not an excuse, but the reality of it. But yeah, Cathedral is, they're ranked second for a reason. They're certainly capable, we thought, of winning that game, and certainly capable of winning this week. And they're maybe as talented as anybody in 6A. So now that they've got that defense playing like they do, I don't know that they're not the favorite to win the whole thing in 6A.
Yeah, and yeah, kind of just backing up what Kyle said. I mean, if Cathedral's defense is locked in, then other teams should be worried, because we were expecting them to win in a shootout. But I mean, they have names. Kendrick Gilbert is a really talented defensive lineman. Kai Scargett is really strong in the secondary. So I mean, the talent is there. So it was surprising that Cathedral was in so many shootouts. And that Danny O'Neill kind of had to bail them out at times. So yeah, if that defense can be locked in, then I mean that's a complete team. And yeah, I would say they're kind of putting other teams on notice with that performance against Brownsburg.
One other game to mention before we throw it open to you guys, get your general takeaways. Monrovia keeps its run going with a 26-21 win over Owen Valley. Quite the run there by the Bulldogs, Kyle.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, you just don't see this in football that often. Occasionally you have a basketball team. I was thinking, I was trying to correlate that to, a run we've seen in basketball. Franklin last year in basketball had a kind of a similar story. They made it to the regional final. I think they were 8-14 going into the sectional, and then they won 4 games in a row and almost won the regional championship. They got a really good player. I'm getting off on a tangent, but Micah Davis is, one of the better juniors this year in the state. But anyway, I mean, it's just, you don't see that happen in football very often, where a 2-7 team, comes out and just starts this type of a run where they're 1 game away now from the state championship game. And what a story that would be. They're still not even 500. They're 6-7. So that's just, it's amazing. And it's not like, they beat a Danville team that, granted their record wasn't great, but they had beat Tri-West and Western Boone, going into that sectional final. Both those teams were ranked in the top 10 all year, and Danville at one time was too. So, they're just, credit Andy Olson, the Monrovia coach. They're running the ball like, and to be honest, I mean, Monrovia has had some really good teams in the past under Kevin Hutchins. They went to the state championship twice, running that same style of offense that, that belly series, they call it. It's kind of like a wing tee that they run. It's a unique offense. It's fun to watch it, but they, it's sort of similar what they're doing, and they're doing it really well. And, they've just, and they do play in a really tough conference too. So I think that's part of the reason why their record looks like it does. They play with Lutheran and, Speedway and all those teams that are in that Indiana Crossroads Conference. But But yeah, I mean, this is just it's a story unlike many we've seen lately, and they're going to be again up against it at Lawrenceburg. I mean, that's going to be a really tough opponent. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's a I'm glad you brought that up because it's fun to see stories like that happen now and then.
I'll leave it open to you guys before we get to the picks. Are there any other games or anything else that jumped out to you from regional week?
No, I mean, for me, I would say Monrovia is kind of the biggest standout. And I guess it just speaks to the coaching staff and the program there. Because, again, if you're, at 2-7, you're thinking, okay, let's just get this over with. Let's kind of
Yeah.
hang it up. And I don't really want to play. I mean, you're getting beat in. Trust me, I know. Like I said, I never played in the postseason. So when you're getting beat up week after week, it can be demoralizing, especially in football, especially when it's such a physical contact sport. So just credit to that program for keeping the kids engaged and obviously turning it around, because it didn't seem like they had like any injuries or any kind of miraculous comeback that really sparked them. It just seems like things are really clicking. So I mean, shout out to those kids in the program for staying engaged and believing and playing well.
Yeah, I'd say Whiteland was maybe one. Whiteland, put it on Plainfield in the second half of that game. Not necessarily a surprise, but credit to Whiteland for what they've. I know, we've talked about them before, but now they're one win away from a state championship, and we've talked this season about 5A being sort of that class that's like, what's going to happen, who knows. We saw Plainfield. They were able to get a sectional title for the first time in 22 years, and then. So it's been that type of year in 5A, but Whiteland's kind of been the one consistent, throughout this whole season. They kind of put us on alert and everybody on alert with that Lawrence North win early in the season, and then you have continued to play really well all year. So, I think that's we could be seeing them play next weekend at Lucas Oil, and that would be pretty cool for a program that's had a lot of success under Darren Fisher, but hasn't quite got to the pinnacle just yet.
Now it's time for the segment that Akeem is probably dreading, and that's the picks. I'm trying to find the numbers frantically, but I know, Kyle, you added another game to your lead last week, correct? So you're up by what, 4 now?
5.
Thanks,
5.
Akeem. I wasn't going to say it. I'll let him.
Yeah. Yep.
5-game lead. Akeem, what went wrong last week? Let's dissect what went wrong for you, so maybe we can clean up some of these mistakes now as we hit the final stretch.
I just I mean, there weren't bad picks at the time, I just had to go out on a limb. There were some teams that let me down. I guess in that aspect, the Westfield performance was kind of the most shocking. Just kind of, I expected that to be a much better game. Obviously, I picked them to win, so that was kind of the biggest surprise, I would say. But we're in the postseason; these games could go either way. So it's a toss up, and maybe Kyle's luck will run out eventually.
Maybe. I like how he called it luck too, Kyle. Not skill, luck.
Hey, neither one of us really set the world on fire. I was 8-4, which is not great, and Akeem was 7-5. So neither one of us really. We're kind of that. If those were college football records, we'd be playing like in the Cheez-It Bowl, maybe, or the Gasparilla Bowl. If 8-4 and 7-5, so we're not in the college football playoff with those records.
What's the French fry bowl? I want to play in that one where they dump the French fries on the coach after the game. I don't know what my record has to be to get into that one, but if it's 6-6, we'll take it. Because
that's the Idaho Potato Bowl or something like that.
Yes, yeah, that's my dream bowl game. So yeah, hey, 6-6 is still good enough.
Idaho Potato Bowl wants to sponsor us. Let us know. We'll happily accept that and invites to bowl games in Boise.
We can dump potatoes on Akeem's head next time.
Yeah, that sounds delicious.
Actually, does sound fun. We'll have to stow that away for next week. Let's start with the lower classes and work our way up. Let's start in Class A with Adams Central putting their undefeated record on the line on a road trip to North Judson, 12-1. Akeem, we'll let you have honors.
Yeah, so Adams Central is a really good program. They played in the state final last year against Lutheran and gave Lutheran a really good game. Probably the toughest game Lutheran's played in almost 2 years, just with the way that they were able to play against them. So that's a legit program, and they're kind of a very talented, kind of in the same way that Lutheran is. They expect to be here. They're familiar with the kind of the circumstances and everything like that. So I'm going Adams Central. And they're undefeated, by the way. So, yeah.
Yeah, they were. They did. They gave that game last year was one of the better games of the weekend when they played Lutheran at Lucas Oil, and I didn't really expect that. I thought they were kind of a running, not kind of. They really try to run the ball with different running backs, and they had their quarterback is back, Ryan Black. He played last year for them, and then their top defensive linebacker Keegan Bloom is also back as well. But they did lose some of their top rushers from last year, but. In the North Judson, they seem to be better than they were a year ago. They kind of had a breakout year last year, but they have two 1,000-yard rushers this year, and then their quarterback is almost to 1,000 too. So they could have three 1,000-yard rushers, which I can't believe that happens very often. That's very rare, I would think. But I'm still I think Adams Central, just because they've been the team in the last year. I think they've got that ability to win again. And after watching them last year, I just kind of like how their program operates, and I like their coach seems to really, he's been there a long time as well. So I'm going to take Adams Central to advance.
Next up, Lutheran at North Decatur. Both teams are 13-0 on the year. Kyle, does Lutheran get it done?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I know, Brian, you're covering this game, and I'm not sure what to expect necessarily, other than Lutheran. Everything they've done this year has just been so dominant. And again, last week they did allow some points, so maybe that's maybe a negative, obviously, but 49-7 they beat Providence. So that's the first 7 points they've allowed in the tournament so far. So I don't see them losing, but North Decatur's been really good defensively all year long. They've forced 25 turnovers and allowed only 6.8 points per game. So, their offensive numbers aren't blow you away necessarily, but they have a quarterback, Carson Palmer, who's thrown for almost 2,000 yards, and they have a 1,000-yard rusher as well. So I don't know. They're interesting to me. They've shut out a whole bunch of teams. I can't remember how many, but they've been one of the best defensive teams around in Class 1A. So I would hope you'd see a good game, Brian. But I think you'd be foolish, and we'll see if Akeem's foolish. But I think you got to pick Lutheran here.
Yeah, no, I can't pick against Lutheran. And if we're talking quarterbacks, I think Lutheran has the clear advantage in that aspect with Jackson Willis. I mean, these numbers, 3,600 yards passing. He's averaging 20 yards of completion at a 70% completion rate, 50 touchdowns and just 5 interceptions. So, I mean, that's just domination right there. And they're a really well-oiled machine with talented receivers and a talented running back as well, and Joe Davis. So, yeah, I can't pick against Lutheran. I'm going with the Saints.
Class A picks are in. Both guys are going with Adams Central over North Judson, and Lutheran 13-0 over North Decatur, also 13-0. So they're going with the road teams in Class A. Class 2A, we have Fort Wayne Bishop Luers traveling to Andrian. Kyle, who do you have there?
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth on that one. These teams played 8 years ago in the semi-state. Andrean won 17-15. So there is some history. Obviously, these programs, two of the better in the smaller classes year in and year out. Luers is always, seems like they always have several losses because they play, the 5A and 6A teams out of Fort Wayne. So, their schedule sometimes is a lot tougher than other teams that they see. But Andrean's kind of the same way. They play a really tough schedule as well up there. Luers traditionally likes to throw the ball, and this is kind of the same deal this year. They have receiver Nick Thompson, who has 954 receiving yards, and a quarterback, Charlie Stansky, with over 2,200 yards passing and 19 touchdowns. So, and then on the other side, Andrean, they have Drake Bowen. So enough said with there. He runs the ball, basically 200 yards every game, and he's has 125 tackles this year, which is crazy. So I'm taking Andrean, kind of the Drake Bowen factor. They're the defending champs, and I think until proven differently, they're the pick here. But I think this will be a good game. It'll be a tough test, I think, for Andrean to get through Luers.
Akeem, who you got?
Yeah, I think Kyle pretty much nailed it there. Drake Bowen is probably not even just one of the best players in the state, but one of the best players in the nation. You know, a 4-star, 5-star type recruit going to Notre Dame to play linebacker, and he's also like a 5-star base recruit at baseball too. So just a really talented athlete. I'm sure he could do whatever he wanted to. He had 227 yards rushing last game. So when you have the best player on the field and he plays both ways, it's just kind of hard to bet against that. So I'm going Andrean.
All right, both picks are in for Andrean. Linton Stockton, 13-0, traveling to Evansville Mater Day at 10-3. Akeem?
Yeah, and this is kind of another just interesting quarterback matchup between the two teams. Hunter Jennings was someone I got familiar with last week. Just again, he's kind of their leading passer and rusher. Just kind of love the dual threat ability that he has. And then on the other side, there's Mason Wonderlick, who's a kind of a 6'5" pocket passer. You know, can really operate well with out of the spread and distribute the ball to his receivers. So kind of a contrasting styles on offense there. But I'm going with Linton Stockton just because I think they're playing well, and I really like the quarterback.
Kyle?
Yeah, these teams have met. Kind of interesting. They played in the same sectional from 2018 until last year, and Evansville Mater Dei won all of those games. Last year was 28-27. So these teams are very familiar, even though sometimes this point in the tournament, teams don't know each other very well, but these two do. Linton Stockton has to travel down to play Mater Dei, which I think in a game like this will matter, and I also think it'll matter that. Akeem mentioned the quarterbacks, and both are very good. Mason Wonderlick took this team to the state finals last year. So, I'm going to go the opposite of Akeem here and take Mater Dei to win because I like that experience with Wonderlick, passing, and he's got 4 receivers with at least 27 catches. So, he can spread it out to a lot of different guys. They beat a very good Triton Central team last week. We've talked about Triton Central all year. They put 35 points up on that team, which that's I don't think that had been done this season. So I'm going to take Mater Dei to make it, and that would actually set up a rematch of last year's championship game between Mater Dei and Andrean.
All right, the first pick of the day where the boys differ. Let's move up to 3A. We have Monrovia traveling to Lawrenceburg. Monrovia 6-7, Lawrenceburg 11-1. Kyle, does the dream season keep rolling for Monrovia?
Man, we keep picking against them, and they keep winning. So it's probably not smart to do so. But I just think Lawrenceburg. I was looking at this game yesterday, and they, Lawrenceburg, since they lost to East Central, who we'll talk about in a minute, but the first game of the year, those teams always play each other. They're neighbors, and they lost 38-3. Since then 12 games have given up 40 points total the whole season. So pretty incredible defense by Lawrenceburg all year. And they're going to see a really good running game from Monrovia, like we touched on earlier. Brayton Belcher and Josie Hand have been both really running the ball well for Monrovia. Elias Wagner too has hit some big passes when they've needed it, and they did last week against Owen Valley. But I just think Tegan Bennett and that Lawrenceburg offense. I think they're going to be tough to stop as well, and I'm going to take Lawrenceburg. I think, and I think this will be actually a pretty close game too. I think it could be relatively low scoring, but I'll take Lawrenceburg to win.
The game, who you got?
Yeah, so we're gonna differ here too. I mean, I think when you're having a dream season, you just gotta ride the wave at this point. And like Kyle was saying, both teams they love to run the ball. There probably won't be more than 12 passes combined between either team. But like he was saying, Eli Wagner's kind of added a play action element to the team that when they run the ball, and then they kind of lull them to sleep, and they have that kind of aspect where they can go over the top with the play action. So that's kind of an interesting thing that Monrovia can do. So I think when they have that in their back pocket, they can get the big play when they need to. So I think the dream stays alive. I'm going Monrovia.
All right. Bishop Jatard 9-4 is going up to West Lafayette to play the West Lafayette team that is 13-0. Akeem, who you got there?
Yeah, this is again another kind of good quarterback matchup with Max Mullis and Drew Van Fleet. Max Mullis has over 2,500 yards passing and 1,000 yards rushing, 52 total touchdowns. Kind of maybe a sleeper Mr. Football pick for all we know, just kind of with the numbers that he's putting up. So when you have kind of that again, like I said, the mastery of an offense, I kind of want to go with that. So I'm going West Lafayette.
Kyle?
Yeah, we're going to disagree again. I'm going to take
Wow, wow, wow.
Chichard. So it's going to be, it's Akeem's chance to come back. But yeah, I think Chichard plays a lot tougher schedule than West Lafayette. I'm not, and I think West Lafayette traditionally, they've proved themselves clearly by what they've done over the years. But I do think, just talking this specific season, I think Chittard, playing some of those better games, even though their record looks quite a bit, they're 9-4 compared to 13-0. But I do think playing those games will end up helping them in a game like this. Drew Van Vliet, Akeem mentioned, he's 2,600 passing yards, and he's got Noah Dudick and Aiden Duncan both have over 700 receiving yards this season. So I'm going to take Chittard, and this is also a rematch of 2015. They played in the state championship game. So these teams do have a history of playing each other. I'll take Chittard to win.
Brian, I think you're muted.
Right? Yeah, you're.
I'm batting 1,000 today, boys. New Prairie and Kokomo, both teams are 12-1. We're starting off here in Class 4A. Kyle, who do you have in this one?
Let's see here. Pull this up. Okay.
While you
Yeah,
look that up, Kyle, okay.
What's that?
I was saying, if you were looking it up, I could go with my pick, but if you got it, you go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to take Kokomo. I like, Austin Colby. He's the son of his dad, Brett, led Kokomo for several years. They went to the state finals in 2017, and didn't win state that year, but were able to make it. They're running kind of a similar type of offense now again. And another team that really likes to run the ball. Another team that could have three 1,000-yard rushers already. Evan Barker and Darian Story are there, and then Keegan Name has over 900 yards. So again, pretty rare that happens. New Prairie, they are looking to make it for the first time since 2014. They played New Pal that year, and New Pal was really strong and beat them in the state finals. But they're more of a balanced team. Like, they can run and throw. But I think Kokomo playing at home. I like the Wildcats to make it to the state championship game.
Akeem?
Yeah, so we'll differ here as well. I'm going New Prairie. Like Kyle was saying, they kind of have a balanced attack, but their running back, Noah Mangia, is just a really strong runner with good vision and speed. He's kind of someone that stood out to me just kind of watching some film there. And they have a dual threat quarterback and Marshall Misik. I'm sorry if I butchered the kid's name, but again, a dual threat running back always just adds an interesting element to the offense. So I'm going New Prairie.
Roncalli, 12-1, traveling to East Central, 11-2. Akeem?
Yeah, these teams already met in Roncalli won, but it was a 2-point game, 21-19. So, I mean, obviously, neither team has a clear advantage over the other. Roncalli obviously had a big test against New Pal, and, like Kyle was saying, that could have been considered their state championship game. So maybe they're right for a letdown. Maybe how do you come down from that emotional high and play a team you've already beaten before? These are teenagers, so maybe there could be some apathy that sets in on the Roncalli side. But I say that to say I'm still picking Roncalli.
There he is. Kyle, who you got?
I thought you were just sucking up to East Central for your trip down there Friday, but I guess not. I agree. I think Roncalli, I think you don't make it this far and win that big of a game to lose at this point. I know that's easier said than done, though, because I've seen Josh Ringer. I was just so impressed with him last year, seeing him in person, and he's going to be tough to stop, and they won't stop him the whole time, but I think they'll do it enough. And Cole Burton, and he's a quarterback. All these guys are juniors. Burton, Ringer, and Ryan Brotherton, their top receiver, are all back next year. So they're going to be really good next. I don't know what they have all coming back elsewhere, but having those three back, man, they're going to be very explosive. So this should be a great game. This may be one of the best games of the night, maybe the best game of the night. But I'm going to take Roncalli to advance and beat East Central on the road.
Moving up to Class 5A, let's start with Valparaiso, 9-3 at Fort Wayne Snyder, 11-1. Kyle, let's start with you.
Yeah, so Snyder had to come back. They were down 21-0 last week to Mishawaka, came back and won that game by the score of 41-27. So they really got the offense going. They have Kamari Suarez as a receiver, punt returner. He had a punt return for a touchdown last week. Langston Lavelle is their running back, and Luke Halpert their quarterback. So they're ranked number one in the state in 5A. Again, they always play a very good schedule. A lot of 6A and 5A opponents up there in Fort Wayne for them to play. Valpo was kind of a upset pick. They beat Merrillville last week 15-14 to advance and avenge a loss during the year. They got blown out by Merrillville. So again, these teams are always, two traditional powers up in the north part of the state. I'm going to take Snyder. I just think based on what they've done all year and playing at home, this is a little bit of a trip for Valpo to drive over there and play. So I like Snyder to advance.
Akeem?
Yeah, I mean, part of me wants to go contrarian, because Valpo beating Maryville. I know Maryville is a very talented team in their area. They're known to have several, Division I kind of high level players on that team, especially for that part of the state. They've always had really talented teams. So beating them carries a lot of weight, kind of in my book. Oh man, but Kyle made such a good point for Fort Wayne Schneider. I think I might go. I think I have to go Fort Wayne Schneider there, just kind of to play it a little safe. Of course, I'll probably kick myself if Valpo wins, but I think I'll play it safe and go with kind of the more traditional favorite in a sense and go with Fort Wayne. But I think this game could be a toss-up.
Whiteland 11-1 at Castle 8-4. Akeem?
Yeah, again, we've touched on Whiteland again, just kind of with the season they have. I think you asked me at our selection show who is the best team in 5A, and I hesitantly said Whiteland, and it's looking a lot better now, obviously, because they've continued to play well. They're really sound on defense. Their offense is a well-oiled machine there with the three multiple running backs and Kevin Denham at quarterback, kind of being that point guard that can get the ball wherever he needs to on time and on target. So I think Whiteland's kind of on a collision course with the state final, kind of been like that since the beginning of the year. So I'm going Whiteland.
Kyle?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree. I think Whiteland's the pick here. Castle, though, surprising win over Bloomington South last week. Bloomington South was ranked third in the state. So you had Snyder, Whiteland, and Bloomington South ranked 1, 2, 3, and then Castle rolls in and beats Bloomington South 31-14. So that does kind of raise my attention a little bit. And this is a very long trip to go down to Castle to play for Whiteland. So I think sometimes in these semi-state games where you have to travel all over, it is a little bit of a factor more than, obviously the sectional where you're close. But I don't know. I feel like Whiteland, even though, this is probably a tougher game than it appears. I think Whiteland will advance and then play Snyder next week, and then that would be a 1-2 matchup in the state championship game.
All right, moving up to Class 6A as we round out this week's picks. Let's start with HSE 12-0 at Carroll 12-0. Kyle, what's your read on this one?
Yeah, I think you summed it up, Brian, with HSC how well they played against Westfield and defensively shutting that team out. And I've been really impressed as the year's gone along defensively. They've just seemed to get better and better. They've only allowed 13 points in their 3 tournament wins. So, really impressive performance and that offense. Jalen Alexander, he's a better running back than I thought, even after watching the Fishers game. Some of the moves he makes, the spin moves, and then cutting back across the field, and the tackles he breaks. He's not a huge running back, but he's tough. And then they're very they kind of said this. They're just kind of blue collar. They're not gonna just impress you with a whole bunch of. They're kind of not like Cathedral, where Cathedral will make a lot of plays that you're like, man, just jaw dropping plays, but. They're effective in what they do. Carroll's got a young quarterback, a sophomore, Jimmy Sullivan, who's having a really good year, and they have their story is interesting because their Owen Scheel, who was going to be their quarterback, passed away over the summer. So it's an emotional type of a story for Carroll. I feel like the talent level for HSC. And they played a better schedule overall than Carroll, but I don't going on the road, again, you never know. Carroll's got this game at home. But typically when we've seen these matchups, where it's been, Indianapolis area team against a Fort Wayne team over the years, at least in 6A, I should specify, it's been the, our local teams have fared pretty well. So I'm going to take HSC to advance.
Akeem?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much I see as well. I think Kyle kind of summed it up well. And I guess for us, we kind of get enamored with the passing attack. But like you guys were saying, if Alexander is running the ball like that, that gives them another element where they don't need to. I mean, I know Donovan Hamilton, he's a great, long ball specialist, contested catch. But if they can run the ball with that kind of success, they don't need to kind of take those shots downfield and play that kind of risky kind of offense. They can really just control the ball, ground and pound, and rely on their defense. And that's a great formula for success. So I'm going HSC as well.
Last game of the week, that's Center Grove 10-2 at Cathedral 10-1. A rivalry game with the state championship berth on the line. Akeem, who you going with?
Yeah, and I know Kyle reported it yesterday that this game is going to be played at Tech and not Arlington. Maybe I don't know if it's a home field advantage, or I don't really want to speak to that about the field at Arlington, but maybe playing at Tech now, maybe it'll be a faster game, so to say. I don't know. I'm not saying anything one way or another, but so that kind of throws that aspect out of throws the Mud Bowl aspect out of the window. When they're playing at Tech, but both teams. I've had a chance to see both of them. Cathedral, obviously, with their passing attack, and Center Grove with their rushing attack, led by Micah Coyle. But I guess it just comes down to the defense. And Center Grove, they were a little, kind of susceptible through the pass and kind of a scrambling quarterback that can extend plays. And I think that's Danny O'Neill. He's not the biggest guy, but he can certainly move very well, and he can create in the pocket, and he can create outside of the pocket as well. And if you have a Jerron Tibbs, that's a really scary thought, and Brandon Wooten as well. So I think I'm going to go Cathedral. Obviously, I think it's going to be a close game, and both obviously the teams know each other well, so there's not going to be any secrets. But I just think Cathedral, with the way they're playing on defense, has enough to get it done.
Kyle, who you going with?
Yeah, so this was interesting how all this worked out with the field situation, and I don't know that as it worked out, because there was having covered this game last year, there was a lot of anger, I would say, about from Center Grove about the field conditions at Arlington last year, but honestly, it ended up, it hurt Cathedral in a few areas. Obviously, it had rained all week and it was just a mud pit basically, and it was fun for someone who had no, invested in the outcome. It was fun to cover it, and I've covered lots of those games over the years. Like those mud games don't really exist as much anymore because everybody's got turf now. So I just thought it was fun and I know Grace, our photographer, loved it because she got great photos out of it. So we're gonna miss that part of it. I kind of was looking forward to that, and hearing all the griping about the conditions, but as it turned out, I didn't even realize this was possibly that I didn't know. As you cover this stuff, I forgot that this matchup could even happen again, and it would be Cathedral's home game. I hadn't even thought about that. So, and then I heard late last week that, hey, this game's going to be played at Arlington and it's like, oh wow, this could be fun. But as it turns out, they're moving it to Tech. Tech's a great venue. It's a bigger stadium. It makes a lot of sense to play it there. It'll be a better, it'll be, they have turf, it's big. They'll get more fans in. It makes complete sense to move it there. So I like that it's there actually. So I think it'll be fine. These two teams have played against each other there before, in the past. So it'll be a great atmosphere. Tech's a great venue for this type of game. And I think actually this may work, kind of ironically, maybe to Cathedral's benefit to play this because they're probably a little bit more of a passing team. So that may be, kind of ironic that it works out that way. But who knows? I mean, the way, as Akeem said, I mean, Coyle ran for 300 yards last week, so it's not like they're not playing well either. But I just think at the end of the day, I think Cathedral having beat Center Grove in the regular season game, I think that's motivation for Center Grove. I think that kind of adds to the chip on the shoulder type of a thing that they have to them. And even in the moment, I was like, man, it seems like they kind of enjoy that, sort of thing. So us against the world type of mentality. I think that'll play into their favor on Friday a little bit. And, it seems like they're getting a little bit more healthy than they've been. I think it's going to be a great game. I think Cathedral's probably the pick, but I'm going to take a little bit of an upset and take Center Grove to win and make it to the state finals for a third consecutive year, which is fairly unheard of at that level of football. So But yeah, I can't wait to see this game. I think it could go either way, but I'll take the Trojans to win.
All right, Akeem trails by 5, and the boys differ on 5 games this week. So this is a chance for Akeem to even us all up going in and add new meaning to It's a New Season on State Championship weekend. Just a quick recap as we went through things. Kyle is on Center Grove over Cathedral. Akeem is on New Prairie over Kokomo and Monrovia over Lawrenceburg, while Kyle is picking Chittard and Evansville Mater Day. So those are the picks. The picks are in. Kyle, I know you have a lot coming up this week with Semistate, so we'll start the what you got this week with you, sir.
Yeah, so actually lots of basketball stuff, but I've got a couple stories on football, the predictions, and then another story kind of about tying some of these teams together. As you know, I asked the coaches to kind of give me, hey, what's one word that kind of sums up your team, and so I got some good answers on that, and some kids who maybe exemplify that on each of their teams. So I'll look for that coming out Thursday, I think, and then lots of basketball stuff, kind of rolling out some stuff too. But yeah, we'll leave it for football for now. But that's what I got coming for football, and then I'll be covering that game I just talked about, the Center Grove Cathedral game.
Akeem, what you got up on Butler beat and anything else you have coming this week?
Yeah, no, just a lot of Butler stuff. They played last night against Penn State, so we got a quick story and a follow from that game, and then we have another game Thursday, and then another game Saturday. So just it's going to be a pretty Butler heavy week for me.
Good stuff. Good stuff. From me and my sports, we'll have some basketball games this week between Clark and I. Lots of stuff going on Saturday. A lot of big games, including the Johnson County Tournament Championship game. And then we'll also have our volleyball super teams, which should come out later this week. And we'll have, of course, soccer teams came out last week. So go to IndyStar.com to check out those. And yeah, we got some other big stuff in the works here, which we'll start unveiling and rolling out here over the coming days. We have some surprises in store for next week's show, potentially. We'll keep those under wraps, but keep an eye on social media for that, as well as updates on the picks. For Kyle and Akeem, my name is Brian Haenchen, and we'll talk to you all next week.